Okay, Rinpoche started today by reciting a verse from Panchen Losang Chökyi, which says, when the doctors have given all hope for me, where there is nothing else to do, there is no avenue to pursue, nothing else for me to do, at this time, bless me to remember the Lama. So this is a very beneficial verse. It is very good to analyze the meaning. So it says, when I'm really sick, and it comes to the point where the doctors cannot give me any more support, there is no other medicine, there is no other treatment they can offer me. So there is no hope in terms of recovering. And there is no avenue to pursue, meaning, even the pujas after a certain point do not work, they do not support my life. So when I come to this point where there is nothing left for me to do, and I'm just surrounded by friends and relatives, and again, there's nothing they can do for me. All they can do is just worry and whisper next to my bed. So when I reach this situation, bless me to remember the Lama. So when it says bless me to remember the Guru at this time, to remember the advice of the Guru, this refers to bless me to remember bodhicitta. If I come at this point, if I can have recollection of my root Guru and remember him and make a prayer to him, then that is the best thing I can do. So we are requesting blessings to be able to do that when we come to the point where nothing else works. So this is actually very beneficial advice. So every time we have a little bit of spare time, it is very important to make a little bit of effort to train ourselves in developing bodhicitta, correct view, and so forth. The more we develop familiarity, the closer we will come to actually inducing an experience. Every little bit of familiarity just keeps adding up and adding up to the point that it helps us to actually have the experience of these realizations. So it's very important every time we have an opportunity, start with something easy. You can start reading something you can understand, such as the Lamrim. And if you have questions, find a teacher or find someone who knows a bit more than you and just ask all the questions that you have. So every day, try to cultivate familiarity. And the more you train on those things, the easier they get. As I say, there is nothing that doesn't get easier with familiarity. So every little bit of effort you make, it will make a difference. It will make it easier. When we want to describe Buddhism, we describe Buddhism in terms of our view and in terms of our contact. And our view is the view of dependent origination. Our contact is the contact of avoiding harming others. So it's very important to cultivate a mind that is noble and mind that is kind. Because if you have a mind that is kind, then from that point onwards, everything almost like automatically becomes a smooth path. Why? Because if you have this attitude of a noble intention towards others, others will not oppose you, they will not cause harm to you. So everything becomes smoothed out. And this is how we come to the point of saying we will experience peace on earth. So cultivating that kind, noble attitude in terms of contact is supported, as we say, by the view of dependent origination. So dependent origination highlights the fact that we are interrelated, we are interdependent, we absolutely depend upon each other. And we can look at it in a bigger scale in the world, like if you see the different nations, you see how much these days in terms of trade, we depend upon each other. The whole trade now has become international. If there is one particular resource, let's say oil, that one country has a lot of, so what they do is they trade it with a country that is lacking that particular resource. So there is this interdependence. When we develop this understanding and we couple this conduct of not harming but benefiting others with the view of dependent origination, there will be incredible benefit, because automatically that puts us in a position of thinking how to cultivate friendships, how to cultivate love and affection for others. And if we cultivate these attitudes, then automatically, almost like as a side product, we will see that there will be peace amongst individuals and in the society and amongst different countries. There will be no opportunity for hostility. There will be no need for hostility or war or anything like this. And therefore, the Buddha has stressed that it's very important for us to train in these two aspects, generating the loving kindness, the mind of bodhicitta, and the view of dependent origination. This is the path that leads to peace. That's it. Okay, so today the main thing that we will receive today is the transmission of Maitreya's aspiration. Now, for a number of days, we have been receiving teachings from Rinpoche. First of all, in the center, we had teachings on the 4 recollections. And then here, the last 2 days, we had 2 Jenangs. And in all of those occasions, we stressed that at the beginning, the preliminary activity that is very important is to set the motivation. But equally important is that at the end of the activity, when we have generated root of virtue, we must dedicate this virtue. Because if we do not dedicate the root of virtue, there is always the danger that it might be destroyed by anger and so forth. As Master Shantideva has said, other virtue is like the trunk of the banana tree. It gives fruit once and then dies away. So when he says other virtue, what he means there means virtue that is not influenced by bodhicitta. So other virtue will just give you a result once and then it's finished. But virtue influenced by bodhicitta is like the evergreen plant that keeps on giving, because virtue that is influenced by bodhicitta will continue to give results, and those results will be inexhaustible and will increase forevermore. So keeping that in mind, it is appropriate that we receive here the aspiration of Maitreya. Okay, so we begin with the transmission. The transmission, please follow your text. The transmission will be intersected with some short advice on key verses and words. So after the title of the text, it begins by saying, homage to all Buddhas, homage to the Bodhisattvas who possess the divine vision of seers, and homage to the hearers as well. This is easy to understand. We don't need to comment on that. The next verse is important. Homage to bodhicitta, the heart of awakening, that keeps the lower realms at bay, that shows us the way to the higher realms, and lead us to a state beyond aging and death. So here, this verse, in a very brief way, introduces us to the training that is shared with the individual of the small scope by saying the one that keeps the lower realms at bay. It also introduces us to the training that is shared with the individual of the middle scope by saying that shows us the way to the higher realms. And it also talks about the training of the individual of the great scope, because it talks about bodhicitta, the heart of awakening, that leads us to the state beyond aging and death. So having briefly introduced the training that is common of the individual with the small scope, the middle scope, and the training of the individual of the great scope, next it continues by explaining how important it is to engage in the 6 perfections and complete the training in the 6 perfections, starting from generosity, ethics, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom. we continue with the next two verses. So the next one says, I go before the awakened ones to confess any and all misdeeds that I may have committed while under the sway of mind. So this is a confession of all negativity that I might have created whilst my mind was under the control of afflictions. So in the eyes or in the presence of the Buddhas, I confess all this negativity. Continuing with the next verse, may all merit accrued through the three kinds of actions become a seed for my omniscience and inexhaustible awakening. So whatever virtue I have created with my body, my speech, and the mind, all this virtue, all this merit may become a seed that is deposited in my awareness so that I will awake into Buddhahood. So the verse that talks about the accumulation of merit, it says it's an aspiration, and it says whatever merit I have created through the three kinds of my actions, may all this become a seed. So that seed is posited upon my awareness, and it becomes the seed for my omniscience. And the last line is like an aspiration, because it says, may my awakening be inexhaustible. Okay, so the next couple of verses, it says, the Buddhas are aware and rejoice in any offering made to the awakened ones through the Buddha fields of the 10 directions. And so do I too rejoice. So the Buddhas are aware of any offerings we might make to the Buddhas of the 10 directions. And when they see us make offerings, they rejoice. Their minds are pleased and satisfied. And similarly, just as they are pleased and satisfied, I also rejoice in these types of offerings. I hereby confess all negative actions. I hereby rejoice in everything meritorious. I hereby pay homage to all Buddhas. May I attain the supreme wisdom state. So again, the last line of the verse is like an aspiration that is expressed. So with the last verse, we see that having presented offerings, it says, after we haven't presented offerings, it says, I hereby pay homage to all the Buddhas, so I prostrate. And then the last line, which is an aspiration, a type of dedication, it says, may I attain the supreme wisdom state. So whatever merit is created in this way is dedicated towards the accumulation of pristine wisdom. Then we continue with the next three verses that are the verses of urging the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma. So it says, I exhort each and every bodhisattva dwelling in the 10 directions and upon the 10 bodhisattva levels to awaken now to supreme enlightenment. So this is addressing all the bodhisattvas that exist in the 10 directions, those who have received the prophecy of obtaining the state of enlightenment. And it says, I urge them now to reach that state of enlightenment that was prophesied upon them. And as they awaken to supreme enlightenment, may they turn the wheel of Dharma so as to tame the demons and all their hordes and bring benefit to every living being. So not only do they go through through the process of reaching the state of complete enlightenment, they also subdue the maras, the demons, and for the sake of benefiting sentient beings, they turn the wheel of Dharma. May the beat of the great drum of Dharma free beings from their suffering. For unimaginable billions of eons, may the awakened ones teach Dharma and remain. So the meaning should be clear. So we are requesting the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma and produce the sound of Dharma by beating the great drum of the Dharma. And this is to benefit sentient beings who experience different types of suffering. And for billions of eons, may they remain to teach the Dharma. Okay, then it continues. It says, I beg you, best of humans, look upon us drowning in the mud of desires, bound by the ropes of craving, and in other ways absolutely trapped. So it talks about sentient beings who are trapped by attachment for cyclic existence, for everything samsaric, which is like sinking and drowning in the mud of desire. So it says, look at us with great compassion. May the Buddhas not level criticism against those of impure minds. The Buddhas do not criticize like this is good or this is bad. And instead, may they give love to beings and free them from the ocean of existence. So with their loving minds, may they give them freedom from this type of the bounds of cyclic existence. Okay, the next verse and a half. May I train in the likeness of the perfectly awakened Buddhas of the present, past, and future, and uphold the Bodhisattva conduct. May I bring to completion the 6 perfections and lead to the end the 6 classes of beings. So it talks about the Buddhas of the 3 times, totally complete enlightened beings, or those who came in the past, those who are becoming enlightened now, those who will come in the future. And it says, may I train just like them, and may I uphold the Bodhisattva conduct. So it's another prayer, another aspiration. May I bring to completion the 6 perfections and lead all 6 classes of sentient beings to the end. It continues by saying, may I manifest the last of the 6 super knowledges and reach the unsurpassed state of awakening. So yet another aspiration. May I realize the truth of emptiness, in which all is birthless and non-arising, without intrinsic nature, without location, with neither mental process nor substance. So it refers to realizing the state of emptiness, where it says we understand that all phenomena are not inherently produced, so they do not have inherent birth. They do not have inherent arising. They do not have inherent abiding. There is no location in which they abide inherently. They do not have inherent nature. So understanding the lack of inherent existence of the object is another aspiration. Lesson. Okay, so then it continues by saying, just like the great sage, the Buddha himself, may I realize the truth of selflessness, in which beings do not exist, nor any living beings, nor an individual, nor any kind of person. So this is an aspiration here to understand that the Buddha himself does not inherently exist, the Dharma does not inherently exist, and a living being by any other name, because you see here we have name equivalents. We have living being, we have an individual, we have a person. So whatever you call that, the person, the individual, the sentient being, all of them, just like the Buddha, just like the Dharma, they lack inherent existence. So he says, may I realize the truth of selflessness, the lack of the self that would exist inherently. He continues by saying, may I practice generosity, free from stinginess, without entertaining any notion of sustainability, nor any belief in the self or egotistical clinging, so that the benefit may reach all beings. So it says, without having any belief in the self or egotistical clinging, because first we generate the sense of a self, I, and then we cling into things thinking this is mine. So without having a notion of I and mine, without having a notion of substantiality, meaning without having the notion that the objects exist inherently, may I practice generosity free from stinginess in order to benefit sentient beings who experience poverty and suffering. And then it says, since material things do not exist concretely, may all my needs be spontaneously met. Since all material things are subject to decay, May I master the perfection of generosity. So understanding that things do not exist inherently, may I come to enjoy various objects, and understanding that things are impermanent and disintegrate, may I practice generosity without any sense of stinginess in order to benefit sentient beings. The next two verses. With discipline completely flawless, discipline that is perfectly pure, and discipline devoid of arrogance, may I master the perfection of discipline. So this talks about keeping morality, the various rules of ethics. So it says, may all of these rules be completely flawless, may I be able to keep them in a flawless manner, and my discipline will be perfectly pure, and I practice without any pride, without any arrogance. So again, the expression of the aspiration, may I master the perfection of discipline. With absence of anger, in other words, with patience, akin to how the earth, water, and fire elements, and the wind elements as well, dwell not anywhere, may I complete the perfection of patience. So when there is disturbance that might come externally, from others who perhaps out of anger act in a way to harm me, or when the elements, such as the elements of wind, of fire, of earth, and so forth, become disturbed internally within my own body, anytime I experience any harm, external or internal, may I be able to practice patience and perfect the practice of patience. Continue with the next two verses. First of all, we have the verse that gives the aspiration to establish and perfect enthusiastic effort. With persistent application to diligence, may I be ever joyful and free from laziness, and with strength in body and mind, may I complete the perfection of diligence. This is a very important element here, talking about diligence and enthusiastic effort. And the crucial point in this is the joy that is involved in the activity. So as it says in the entering the middle way, all qualities come from enthusiastic effort. They come from enthusiastic effort because there is joy involved in this. So whatever type of study you do, whether you study in the monastery, the secret text, or you have enrolled in a class and you're studying a particular subject, when you see the benefit of learning that particular subject, when you see the necessity of studying it, there is enthusiasm, there is joy that comes. And when you have the joy and enthusiasm, it means you will not fall prey to laziness, and therefore you will persevere and you will have good results. So as it says here, may I complete, may I perfect the perfection of diligence. The next verse is about concentration, and it mentions different types of concentration. So with illusion-like meditative concentration and bravery-inspiring meditative concentration and Vajra-like meditative concentration, may I master the perfection of meditation. So when we talk about the perfection of meditation, this includes cultivating various types of concentration, such as, for example, the illusion-like concentration, or the hero-like, or the bravery-inspiring concentration, or the Vajra-like concentration. So we continue with the remaining verses, where it says, acting with the three gates of liberation, with the equality of the three times and the threefold knowledge, may I master the perfection of wisdom. So what is mentioned in the first three lines are different aspects or different types of wisdom. So the three doors of liberation, the equality of the three times, and the threefold knowledge. So may I develop all these aspects of wisdom, and may I complete the perfection of wisdom. Continuing with further aspirations, may I be praised by all Buddhas as I beam with light and splendor, and with the diligence of a bodhisattva, may all my aims be accomplished. as I engage in this contact, may I, the one known as Maitreya, bring to completion the 6 perfections and reach the 10 bodhisattva levels. And following that, Rinpoche has given us the transmission of the mantra of Maitreya. There is an additional verse at the end of the Maitreya Aspiration prayer. The one that Rinpoche recited it's a slight variation from what we have, but ultimately the meaning is the same. So at the very moment I pass away, may I joyfully take rebirth into Shita heaven and swiftly delighting the Lord Maitreya, receive this prophecy for my awakening. So with this, Rinpoche has offered the complete transmission of the aspiration prayer of Protector Maitreya. So once again, Rinpoche is saying that it's very important, whatever we do, it's very important to make some effort to develop the mind of bodhicitta. We have to try to train in developing bodhicitta. Bodhicitta as well as correct view. We must familiarize ourselves, engage in practice, and the more we do this, the more our mind will become kinder, the more our conduct will become kinder, meaning we will not cause any harm to others because we will not wish to cause any harm to others. Together with this conduct of kindness towards others, we have to develop the view of dependent origination. The view of dependent origination supports that conduct. So dependent origination refers to our interdependence, refers to the fact that we rely upon each other. Just as any effect relies or depends on its cause, similarly we rely and we depend upon each other. And we can see this, we can see expression of that interdependence in many ways. Trade is just one of the many examples that we have. But you can see that there is always, in a sense, there is trade. Someone who has something and someone who is lacking that thing, there is always an exchange and dependence upon each other. And we should always benefit this, generate that attitude that we want to benefit, we want to help others, we don't want to harm others because ultimately we rely upon them. And the more we cultivate this attitude, the more we will treat others as family. And this is the way to establish peace. Now, we talk all the time about world peace, world peace, world peace. It's easy to talk about it, but actually to achieve it, we have to make some effort. We have to work towards this. And we know that, for example, when we study about technology and things like this, we see great improvement, technological improvement, material improvement in our lifestyle. So similarly, when we engage internally in the study and the training of the mind, when we train the mind to develop bodhicitta, the mind is improved, the mind becomes better. So we have this result. We talk a lot about happiness and well-being. Of course, there is physical sensation of happiness and there is also mental happiness. And from the two, the mental happiness is far more important. And therefore, Rinpoche says, these are my parting words and advice to you. Please never forget this. Please make the effort to improve your mind. Please make the effort to cultivate kindness and the mind of bodhicitta and the correct view. Don't forget this.
Dan judu ge melan de nyam du sonrona den da den ze chasi ran re le jiwe lu so long she yong dan ga ja cha zhu be xie wo zun zen guan de tu je shong do na gong bo xie re si wang si je ja re shen ara kang jian yong song ja che melan kang ze de zan den de nyu du chao ro Nandong Chunyi Samu Dende Chosum Tuji Tuda Denzi Dende Lume Dende Daja Dembe Mulan Kemi Nundu Sho Otoche